What's up, everybody? It's DG, and I'm back with another episode of Swipe File, and this is not just my bigger twin over here, Josh Allen,
Also
but
with the hairdo.
yeah, we got the same hairstyle. Josh is stronger than I am.
You're faster than I am.
Yeah, I can maybe do some more pull-ups, but that's about it. Anyway, I'm excited, man, because so here's the deal. I told everybody I was going to double down on this podcast and do more of it, and I think the thing that I was screwing up is, like, I think what's so fun about working at Drift, for example, is I'm a marketer doing marketing to marketing people, and we're using our own product, and I'm like, wait, there's so many lessons that, like, our best content, I think, here is when we just talk about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I was like, shit, why have I not just texted Josh and said, let's do a podcast? So, all right, so let's do a podcast.
This is overdue.
This is overdue. So I have like a million things I want to ask you, but obviously this is like, we take this conversation wherever, but I want to, so you started off, like, you started your career in sales, right? And I don't really want to go unpack your career, but I want to talk about, like, the role of, so you're the CRO at Drift, right? Did you see that, like, 5 years ago, if you were to say as a VP of sales or whatever, like, was a CRO role a thing? Like, where did this come from?
Not really. It was a, you know, it was funny because you'd look at organization trees. You go back, I don't know, 5 to 7 years ago, and the highest level you got to in sales was SVP of sales. Like, SVP of global sales was what you were going for. And at my past companies, like, that's what the roles were, and that's what you were striving for. And then as SaaS just became pervasive, there was so much more of a focus on revenue versus bookings. And so I think it was a way for SaaS companies to say, remember, it's about the long-term outcome, so what's happening with revenue. So there's a bunch of different components of that. It's not just the acquisition and what you're doing for sales up front, but it's good account management, it's customer success, it's the onboarding experience for a customer. So it was, like, I think the introduction of the CRO title sort of lengthened the responsibility for the whole customer journey, as opposed to just the selling aspect that happened in the middle.
So to go back to what you said about, like, revenue versus booking. So in the old world, you would just book as many deals as you could.
Yeah,
that was the job.
Get it up on the whiteboard.
Bookings.
That was the goal. Get the booking on the board.
But then, and we've had, you know, early days of Drift, like, we spent a lot of time with Mark Roberge, for example, and he talks about, you know, his methodology, and that's when, with kind of a funny conversation we just came out of, which is more like product-led growth stuff, right? Where sales started to be more incentivized for the success of an account. Yeah. And that's where these things kind of blurred.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I think, because, like, revenue is the outcome. It's the outcome for the company. It's what the CFO is focused on. In public companies, it's what the market is focused on, is they want to know what are you actually generating for revenue as a company. So I think it was a way of kind of subtly making sure that whoever was responsible for in the sales org was focused on a better long-term outcome, as opposed to just that moment in time where you get a booking done. Because there's a lot of work that happens after that.
So how do you, like, in that role, how do you stay sharp on all these things, right? Because I think it's one world if you're like, I run a sales team, their job is to sell. But like, you're very involved in, you know what's going on in marketing, you know what's going on in customer success. Like, how does that play out into how you run your days?
Good question.
Because I think it would be really easy for you to just be like, I own revenue, we're gonna, we're gonna book more. Because, like, you're never, it's almost like winning solves all problems, right? Like, one answer could just be like, let's just go crush bookings for 3 months and then figure out the problem. But, like, it seems to be you have a little bit more of a long-term lens, and you're involved in the other teams.
Yeah, I think you have to be. It's I get crucified for using sports analogies too often.
You can use sports analogies.
But
it's
there
totally
is, like, you look at, like, all right, coaching staff of a football team.
Okay.
Let's can we wait for that to pass?
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a fire truck.
Have you noticed the new sirens on police cars in the cities, by the way? They have this, like, deep bass that's like a whoop sound.
Oh, yeah. What is that?
I don't know, but
is it, like, less hard on your eardrums?
I don't know if I don't know if you can hear it, like, over the radio if you're in your car, or, like, earpods, or what it is. But I noticed it when I was in New York City first time, and it's, like, a very different sound.
It's scary.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, if Annie was here, my 2-year-old daughter would go wee wee.
I love that.
They're all the same. Fire truck, police truck,
ambulance.
So anyway, okay. So here's what I want to talk about. Let's just transition. Let's talk about marketing. This is a marketing podcast.
Yes. Okay.
I want to know all the, like, good relationships. How can marketing, like, how do we work best with you? And I don't want to talk about here at Drift. Obviously, there's stuff, but, like, I want to like get real. Like, what are the beefs that you have with marketing, and what are the things that like we don't often see? Because I think most people that listen to this podcast, they're marketing. They're in the weeds every day, and like marketing, LinkedIn, for example, we'd love to do this thing where like, look at this shitty email I got from this dumb sales rep who, you know, and I do it too, right? But like, I want to know like the other side. I want to know the other side of this because I felt like, you know, early days of Drift, like I was the first marketing person here, and we had, you know, 1 rep, then 3 reps, then 10 reps, and we were really close because it was easy then. Like,
you're physically close.
Physically
too,
close.
Right?
Like every day, I remember every day at 5 o'clock, we would go and sit down. Like Armin had like the first 4 or 5 reps. Armin's our VP of sales. He ran the sales team like in the early days of Drift, and I would just go sit with them and just listen. And every rep would go around and be like, okay, I had 3 calls today. And it'd be like, oh, cool. Where'd you get them from? That webinar that you did. And I'd be like, cool. Okay, that must be working. Let's do more of that, right? And that was like an amazing, amazing thing. Like, I feel like we could write a whole book just on that experience. But as we grow, like I feel less removed from that today. And it also becomes harder because then you have, you know, 30 people on the marketing team and different priorities. So how can you stay closer? How can we stay closer to sales to actually make an impact? Other than just like, we generated a bunch of stuff, we punted it over the wall, go.
Yeah, I think it's, I think you're one of these people who just has this natural curiosity about what's going on in the business, in the market. That's important. The best salespeople are wired the same way, where it's like you're just so curious about your customer and what they do and how they've built their business and why they do things the way they do and the types of people they've hired. It's the curiosity and wanting to understand what's happening. So I think about it from a sales standpoint as like we look at the leads that we get, we look at the opportunities that we've developed based on the meetings we've had, and you try to unpack and have as deep an understanding as to why. For good outcomes, for bad outcomes, and for everything in the middle. You want to deeply understand the why, which is it's a lot harder than it sounds. You can have surface level understanding, but it's hard to go deep and truly understand that, okay, if we move this lever this way, these are the dominoes that fall afterward. I think marketing is the same way, where it's like, yes, we have this big, beautiful brand, and then we have much more specific demand generation activities that are happening. We have very particular pieces of content we're building that are targeted at personas, they're targeted at types of companies, they're like all these different things. It's the want to understand what each of those is generating and what types of outcomes they're generating and where we could actually develop better content, or when is the time to pivot a little bit and start to focus on a CMO or an executive of an enterprise and offer a different layer of it's so I think where marketing teams are successful and sales teams and frankly most types of functions is when there's that deep curiosity and want to understand the results that are happening within the business.
I think that I talk about this a lot on this podcast, is like, I think that curiosity is the #1 skill in marketing. And for me, it's like actually a gift and a curse, because it means I can never just let something go.
Shut it off.
I need to know like why is he using that camera and that camera? You know, but it's just like I can't ever turn it off. But it does push you to understand like, well, why did we do that thing, and what is the effect of that? And I that is the magic, right? Is like when you can do something that, like, if I think back to the early days again, which is like we had no attribution then, and we would literally I would go 20 deals, and I just, hey, let me get the last 20 deals that closed in Salesforce, and literally go one by one, and then in a spreadsheet be like, okay, we had the chat transcript, so they said webinar. Okay, that was a webinar. The last page they visited was the demo page, so they got a demo. And then literally just out of that, make a simple pie chart that's like 30% of people came. That's the stuff that is so fascinating. But
things that don't scale.
Things that don't scale.
Yeah.
But do you see that even at our scale now? Is it like, when you're digging in with your team, ops leaders, is it still the things that don't scale that you find the real learnings from?
Yeah. I think if you're in a growth company, if you're in a true growth company, like classified as hypergrowth, if you're in a hypergrowth company, you should be breaking things left and right, which means that you have to do things that don't scale, because you're not going to have the systems and the processes in place already. The learnings come from things that don't scale. And so it's, give an example of our sales process. we built the sales process for a largely inbound sales motion with the expectation that a customer was a certain percentage of the way down the buying funnel. As we've grown as a company and have moved our business up market, because that's where we're being pulled, we had to change our sales process to adapt to that. But you have to learn the breakage.
Yeah.
You have to start to implement deal by deal
Yep.
pieces of a future process, and then say, all right, this is working. Let's now layer that in. Let's scale it across the whole team.
That's a super interesting learning, right? Because I think it's amazing how much you learn from being here and doing it and doing stuff. And so the learning of like, yeah, we used to just have people that would show up on our website and say, hello, I'd like to buy now, right?
Yep.
Totally different sales motion than like, go to this webinar about 3 demand gen strategies you're going to need to know by 2025, right? Like one person is ready to buy now, one person is not. And it's a totally different profile of lead and person that you're going to need to work that.
And it was different because it was like early days. They were like, I want to test what this thing is. Like, what is this thing that Drift keeps? Why do I see DG's face everywhere? Like, I need to go try this thing.
Do you know that the biggest argument Armin and I used to get in would be like there was too many leads? Okay.
Yeah.
So Armin, I love you, but that was the argument that we would get into a lot, and it is funny because this is for me. It was the first time like being in a marketing leadership role and having like full responsibility for that. And so it's amazing because until Drift, I'd only like read in books and podcasts the jokes about the beefs between sales and marketing. But then when I was in that seat for the first time, I'm like, holy cow! You can see how this thing that you might joke about how marketing and sales don't have the right incentives. You can see how that totally plays out.
Yeah.
Because we do feel like you are two totally different people, right?
Yeah.
Like you're measuring me on leads, you're measuring this other person on deals.
Yep.
Why would I not just generate a bunch of leads and kick them over the wall and be like, look, boss, I'm doing my job.
Why aren't you doing yours?
Why aren't you doing yours?
Yeah.
But I think then it does take like, I think the only way that I saw through that was actually sitting with the actual sales team, because no spreadsheet, no Salesforce report is going to show you that. But then you have a rep here that's like, look, I know you're arguing this point right now. Just come on a call with me tomorrow.
Yes.
And I'd be like, okay. And that was like when things changed for me as a marketer, because you get on a call and all the cute little decks and designs and taglines and stuff that I had made as a marketer, now I'm being forced to actually get on the phone and make that case. And then you hang up the phone and the sales rep is like, see why we need that deck? See why we need that updated case study? And you feel that firsthand, which is you don't get that from a spreadsheet.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think what we all appreciate about you here and our marketing team is the willingness. There's the willingness to want to get on calls, want to talk to customers, want to really understand what they're trying to get.
Well, I think honestly, like I would even if I didn't want to do that and we weren't just curious people, like I would want to do that as a defense mechanism, because salespeople ask for a lot of stuff, like decks and this and that. And so I think it is one way. The lazy way is saying like, no, we can't make that.
Yep.
But also the
lazy
saying
yes to
or exactly, or also the lazy way is saying yes.
Yeah.
Because then you just spend your day being a yes man to the sales team, but you don't actually know what's working. So to be someone who can roll up your sleeves and get on calls and listen, and now there's, we use Gong, for example. It's amazing, right?
It is.
And
Very
so
good.
you don't have to, I don't have to be like, I'm on calls from 2 to 4. You can listen to them on your walk.
And the exact types of calls you want to listen to.
Yeah. And I think one of the marketing lessons that I learned from DC in the early days of Drift, just marketing in general, was like, he always said, like, you just use their words. Use their words. Whatever they say, we could hire some consultant, pay him $50,000 to come in and do a messaging exercise for a company, right? Or you could listen to 5 or 10 calls and you're going to hear exactly what they say. And then be able to spit that back.
And if you
to
say
them.
it back to them, have you read Never Split the Difference?
Yeah.
It's mirroring.
Yeah. Chris Voss, I would have no chance against that guy.
No, I don't think any of us would. It's amazing.
but I think that is the stuff that, like, so I wrote this note while you were talking earlier because I want to talk about sales enablement a little bit and the role that marketing plays in sales enablement.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a big ask at a lot of companies, but I think what most marketers that I know, at least we boil it down to, is like, sales team needs another deck. And I think it's also hard because it's harder to measure. Like, you do something new on the website, you can pretty quickly measure lift in conversion. But in investment in sales enablement, that's going to take longer to measure the lift in close rate, right, or win rate.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about, like, give me the, like, what would you have in a dream world of sales enablement from a marketing team?
Something that is packaged in a way that it's repeatable, it's consistent, and it's in like tight form, meaning I think we have tons of content here, but being able to pick your prescription, that if I'm going on a call with an enterprise talking to a head of demand generation, this is what I'm going to say every single time.
Yeah.
And that because it's easy to take, like, all right, here's what we'd recommend, and then there's 47 versions of it because it becomes doctored, and somebody thinks that they're either smarter or they had this trick that worked before or whatever it is. I actually think the tighter we can make it, and I've heard this from a lot of our recent hires, is when you tighten this thing up and you put this in front of me and I can use it, and I can use it the same way every single time, and I can have my metric proof points that I point to every single time to talk about what happens when you put a second net bot on a website.
Yeah.
That is very powerful stuff.
I think my wife and I have this conversation a lot. Like, we hate going to the doctor, right? And we just went to the doctor a bunch because we just had a kid. But we hate going to the doctor and you don't get a black or white answer from your doctor. You know, when your doctor's like, well, Josh, your knee's bothering you, so you could do this, you could do that, you could do that. No, I'm at the doctor because I want you to tell me what to do.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's a good analogy for like what you mentioned about the prescriptiveness. Like, tell me what I should do next.
I mean, our customers ask us for that.
Tell
me what I'm supposed to do.
And that's also today how you win deals.
Yes.
Like, even if we think we have the best product in the world at Drift, the market is going to always be like, well, how is it different than this, and how is it going to be different than that? So the way that we can win more deals is by showing that you're the expert, right? You have to be. We did an interview maybe a year or so ago in Canada with the guy who runs sales at Shopify Plus. And he said the best salespeople today act like tour guides in a new city, right? You show up in Toronto, you've never been there before. Hey, I'm Dave. You like steak? Okay, then you got to go to this place, right? That's what you want. That's what the best salespeople are today. And so I think your point is like, how can a marketing team figure out what you need to run effective tours?
Absolutely. And the same, if you go on that tour twice, you should hear the same thing.
Yeah.
It should be very close. It should be 98% of the same content. Yeah. And that's what the good ones do, because it is, you're staying within the boundaries of what we know works, and we're prescribing what works to the team, and we're staying there.
Do you own sales enablement here? Have you always done it that way?
Ish. I've seen it done both ways, where it's centralized learning and development for the company, similar to the way we have our operations team built, and then it's kind of hub and spoke. So you have like the spoke for sales development, you have marketing development, customer success. At Drift, we have sales enablement within the sales organization today, which is very very deliberate, I think, based on where we are, because we had a team that's relatively junior in their experience, so the opportunity to really be able to affect process and change and help them develop as quickly as possible. Like, we have this growth curve that's happening right now in two ways. One is not only like the number of customers and the number of deals that we're selling, but the complexity of those deals is increasing pretty quickly, because we have marketing involved, you have sales involved, you have the BDRs and SDRs involved, you have operations involved.
We sell multiple products now, like
exactly, right. So we have to be able to lean on our sales enablement team to help steepen the development curve of the team, to make sure they can keep up with how we're going to market. And so I think in our current stage and state as a company, it works well to have it within the sales organization. In a future state, we may get to a place where like this is so repeatable and consistent that we do have a centralized learning and development function, and you almost have classroom style, and it's the same thing.
It feels like it could be an extension of a good product marketing team also. It
can be product marketing. It can be, I've seen it in my last place, it was in the people organization.
Oh, interesting. As a centralized, so they trained all teams, including sales?
It was learning and development, so they were focused on like leadership development and programs for the engineers, and then there was like the two of the top salespeople in the company had actually gone into enablement and moved into that department. I mean, they spent all their time with us, but it was a centralized function. Yeah, so I think it works both ways.
How do you, all right, we maybe do like 5 more minutes, but I want to talk about marketing. This is less about you as, less as you as like a sales leader, more just as an exec. how do you market? How do I market to somebody like you today?
There's an old saying in one of my former trainings that you can't be perceived as better unless you're perceived as different. I think that's the trick, and it's saying something to me that is either unexpected or is highly targeted at something I'm thinking about. So, which, sometimes you have to anticipate, and sometimes it's just a math equation, and if you reach out to 100 people, 30 of them are going to be thinking about this issue at any given time. So I think if you market to me with some level of understanding of some of the challenges I'm dealing with today and how you've addressed them, like if something came across my desk that was, here is how we were able to ramp reps faster at your 2 largest competitors, I'm going to look at that.
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think there's one emotion there that works almost in any type of marketing, and it's like this. I don't know exactly what it's called. There's probably a real name from somebody smarter than me, but I call it like kind of like the keeping up with the Joneses effect, which is like you want to know what those other 2 companies are
FOMO.
doing.
It's pure FOMO.
Wait, they're doing that?
Yeah.
Why are we not doing that?
Yeah.
Why are they using this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what did I miss out on?
What did I miss out on?
What,
and it might not even be right.
It may not be.
But it's going to get you the conversation.
It's going to get you the conversation. It's going to get you to explore it and understand it. Yeah.
Do you think that, separate from exec, so do you think that, God, this is a leading question, but there's no other way I can ask it, but I think that as a marketer, I think that marketing is getting so much harder than it used to be. And
why do you think that?
Because I think that there is like an infinite amount of supply out there in our industry, and perception, to me as a marketer, perception is everything. And so you see the Scott Brinker's MarTech landscape slide, you see there's 7,000 SaaS companies in our space. Even though we think that we're the most differentiated company at Drift, very few people outside of the company believe that. Just because you look at the sheer stuff in the market, right? So there's there's just so many other products and things that are claiming to do the same things, similar. On top of that, we're also just bombarded as people by information on every channel, right? Like I am addicted to my phone in a way that I wish I could not be addicted to it, right? Like I'm on Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, email, Twitter, LinkedIn. That's all in the last 20 minutes, right? Then you're watching Netflix, you're on Amazon Prime. Like we're also being bombarded with information. As a consumer. On top of that, then marketers, everybody has a podcast, everybody has a blog, everybody has events. You don't have the advantage you had 10 years ago where you're like, oh shit, that's the only SaaS company that had an event. They must be a big deal. There is no more event season anymore. Every company has an event. So I think like the convergence of all those things has just made it like straight up noise. And it's really become a hard way it's hard to get attention because every CRO in the world right now, especially at a fast growing company, is getting 100 sales pitches a week, right? And so it's almost like I remember graduating college and you're trying to apply for a job, and it's just a volume game. You could have the best resume in the world, but they might not see it because 500 other people did. So I think that's what has made marketing harder.
Yeah. Okay.
There's fewer channels that you can. I think like 2006, if you were an early mover and you started a blog, you were going to own search for maybe a decade. Yeah. And it's really interesting because I think for us growing this company, like SEO was not a strategy. And there's a lot of people that blew me up for that, but I think it was the right move. Yeah, we're paying some debt from that now, but like if 4 years ago, if our whole marketing strategy was to rank for the terms live chat, like we would not have been very effective.
And it would have been very expensive.
It would have been very expensive. B, the quality of those people would not have been good. And C, we were trying to re-segment the market and reposition the concept of live chat, so we didn't even want it. And
we wouldn't have had brand.
Yeah, we wouldn't have brand. So anyway, that's my rant to tell you marketing is harder than ever before. But I do think that
I don't know that I totally agree.
Go ahead. This is why you're here.
Yeah, I don't know that I totally agree with it being harder. I think it's different.
Okay.
Where it used to be, that you needed some sort of a major episode or something that was happening to capture somebody's attention. There were more like big hit forums. So it's like your example, if you were one of the first ones to have a blog and somebody landed on that blog early days, it's like, whoa, that's something I haven't seen before. They're keeping it fresh. There's new content. This is valuable. It's interesting. all right, you have an event, and that is a major episode at that point because
yeah.
there's not a lot of other like channels.
Right. Or you only had you had that big product launch once every 6 months.
Big product launch, or you had the one time you dropped in Seattle every year, and you were looking forward to that event because that's when you learned about what was happening, whatever your industry was.
Yeah.
I think now the expectation is that if you're going to buy something, there are these micro events that happen all along the way before you go and purchase something, especially in B2B, where it's more of a drip than it ever was before, and you have to be able to nurture somebody, and it's not just about content. It is about being able to see the brand on LinkedIn when I open my feed, and I'm not necessarily engaging with it, but I see it.
Yep.
It's there,
yep.
And I start to know what it is over time, not because I am actively trying to know, but because you've just been fed so much over time. And then you occasionally run into that bigger episode, whether it's an event or something else. And so there is a longer tail, an expectation around the content and familiarity that's being built. So there's a longer courting process before somebody will buy oftentimes, and that's okay. That it makes it harder, and that there's more channels to manage that you have to be responsible for, and how you want to feed those channels with a consistent message that's saying something similar. But I think the expectations are different.
Okay, I have this, like, one of my worst qualities is I change my mind a lot based on like the last thing that I heard. So I do agree with you that. No, but you reframed that. It's not that marketing is harder, because you could actually make the argument that, like, in the 1950s when there were no channels, marketing was hard.
Yeah, when it was radio, early TV,
show
and
up
billboards.
at somebody's door.
Yeah.
I forget what sales book it was, but or maybe it was just in a training. I once did a Sandler sales training, and the example they talked about was like the vacuum salesman who he would show up at your house, dump a bunch of shit on your rug, and be like, how are you going to clean that up? Well, good news, I got a vacuum. So, but I do think your point is good. Like the thing you said about like these micro events, there is not more than, and it also is just like every day you can be doing something in marketing now, right? You don't have to wait for that, like, on-prem, update to your product every 6 months. And I do think that maybe it's just a mindset thing, which is like more marketers today have to accept the fact that you got to play the long game. And it is all those cuts.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be this like groundbreaking white paper that you develop that is like, that's good to have and it's helpful, but it is a bunch of micro events that lead up to it and happen after it that are usually going to culminate in a sale.
Yeah. All right, Dan, we'll let him go. I think we did a good job. Josh, thank you, man.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Appreciate it. Let's go back to selling some stuff.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks.